Welcome into Point Blank, brought to you by FitzRoofing. I'm Brandon Strange. He is Joel Blank of ESPN Houston. Joel, welcome in. Want to talk some Rockets, of course. Everyone is talking about Tim McMahon's report about the amount of power that James Harden wielded within the Rockets organization, and ultimately how many, including staff and players, felt like he abused that power. When a big report like this breaks, and we saw it last week with SI's investigation of Jack Easterby, every talking head around the country weighs in, and this was no different. For the most part, the consensus has been the Rockets did what many teams do, which is cater to their star, and James simply exploited it without rewarding them with hardware. That's almost universally been the take. Save for one Max Kellerman. Here's what Max had to say.
It's all over the press now today. It's everywhere. It's not just Tim McMahon. The Ringer and a lot of different places are bringing this issue up. And as you mentioned, where does that come from? The team leaks. Isn't it interesting how right now all the negative stories that paint Harden as spoiled, and if anything, the Rocket says, well, they're too nice. Isn't that interesting that comes out today?
I'm going to take the bait here. Would the Rockets sacrifice what's left of their leverage to leak damaging information about James Harden while they currently are in the process of trying to trade him?
I just don't see how they would. I think it's bad business. I think that you have to take your personal differences aside. Now, were there internal meetings trying to figure out who the moles were and who was leaking information and how could that kind of stuff get out there? Absolutely. But would they be the ones that put everything out there so that it could hinder them even further in trying to get leverage to try and trade James Harden and not get 30 or 40 cents on the dollar? Absolutely not, because their owner wrote a book on how to do business correctly and shut up and listen. But the fact of the matter is, from Tillman Fertitta on down, those are smart, savvy people from the standpoint of knowing what works and doesn't work when trying to consummate a deal. I don't think there's any way in hell that the Rockets would do something like that intentionally. Now, the fact that the story leaked and that the story has a lot of juicy tidbits from Tim McMahon, are they true? Is there truth to them? Absolutely. But I think that you can take and see both sides of the story. But the one thing that's for certain in my mind is the Rockets didn't take their side of the story and put it out there as quick as possible so that James could look bad, because they don't want it to affect the way that they try and move on from number 13.
Well, I'm glad you said that. That's a relief, because you were somebody that was in the organization and you still know people there. So that makes me feel better that they wouldn't do what would literally be the most moronic thing ever, which was sacrifice the last of their leverage to throw mud on James when they could simply just do that once he's out the door and once he's traded. So hearing what you say comforts me. But let's do this, because you were in the organization. I want to get some of your insight. But before we do that, why don't you give us a word from FitzRoofing?
Absolutely. We love the people at FitzRoofing. If you've got a roofing issue, a leaky roof, or you're thinking about putting a new roof on your business or your home, there's only one place to call. It's FitzRoofing. Best ratings in the business, best products, and also the best service. And without any doubt, the only one that's out there that's going to take care of you every step of the way. For a free, no obligation inspection, just call them 832-521-3001. They'll take care of you. It's FitzRoofing, making a difference, one home at a time.
Now, Joel, I'm going to put you on the spot, and this is not like some predetermined thing we did in pre-production. I'm really going to put you on the spot here. You were in the Rockets organization for a long time, and you're seeing all of the, kind of the accounts. I don't want to say accusations, the accounts of how the Rockets catered to their superstar. And you've heard all of these stories. You've heard more than we can even share here. Let me ask you this. You were with the team for a long time. How did his treatment, the way the Rockets treated Harden, how did that compare to some of the other stars that came through? Because Houston have seen a lot of big stars come through their door, from Hakeem Olajuwon, Clyde Drexler, Scottie Pippen, Charles Barkley, and you were around for a lot of that. How does what you're reading about James Harden compare to how the Rockets treated some of those guys back in the day?
Brandon, I think every organization does that to a certain degree. They know that where their bread is buttered is with their best players, if indeed we're talking about sports. And so therefore, they will consult with their best players. In a lot of cases, they will give them preferential treatment as opposed to just your fringe player or the end of the bench guy. And that's just smart business. But at the same time, when they give that extra power and that extra good grace place to those players, the players respectfully not only accept it, but they respect it as a whole and don't abuse it. That's what I've seen with most of the guys that I've dealt with in my career with the Houston Rockets. The one guy that has gotten to an abusive standpoint with the power that he was given is James Harden. And it started with the fact that when he came to this organization, he just wanted to prove that he was a number one guy, and he was not there to ruffle any feathers or to stir it up. But after a couple years passed, and when he got Kevin McHale fired by himself, basically, and said, I no longer want this guy as my head coach, and Les Alexander went along with it, that gave him the keys to the franchise that he's never relinquished. And in the process, he's also taken advantage of it, because Akeem Olajuwon had that power, but Akeem Olajuwon wouldn't intentionally and purposefully be late for practices and plane rides and everything in between, because you know why? It would be disrespectful to his teammates, his brothers, the people that he needed on a night in, night out basis. And he thought about the whole team, not just himself. Where James slipped up was he took advantage of the power that was given to him, and then he exploited it to a level in which it started to wear on everyone around him, not to mention his teammates. And that's why you saw Austin Rivers and others talk about how great a teammate Russell Westbrook was, but also how they wanted out from Houston after this last season of having to go through these kinds of things. It's a track record that shows you that when James Harden said he's upset because they didn't listen to who he wanted as head coach, and they didn't listen to him or even ask him about the general manager, there's a reason why. At a certain point, you have to cut bait and say, you know what? We've been there, done that, and it hasn't gotten us to the end result that we've wanted. So going forward, it's maybe time for us to change our strategy a little bit and maybe do things a different way to try and reel a guy like Harden back in, or in this case, ask for his way out.
Is there anything left that the Rockets can do to try to salvage some of this negotiating leverage that they're going to need to maximize the value that they get in return for James Harden? Is there anything left they can do?
It's difficult, Brandon, because if you hear what Stephen Silas has said, or when Harden finally spoke to the media and they asked him about what his relationship and his conversations have been with Rafael Stone, and he said, we haven't spoken. So that speaks volumes. The fact that a team that every year for the past, 5 or 6 years has gone out and got him every player he's wanted and gotten rid of every player he didn't, from Dwight Howard to Chris Paul to Russell Westbrook. They even went out and got him John Wall because that was the flavor of the year that he wanted. And they added a Boogie Cousins who looks fantastic. They've done everything they can possibly do. It's now firmly in James's court, and it's sitting on his shoulders. He either wants to be a part of a team and he wants to join in and participate as one of the guys, or he wants to just stand true to what he has said all along. It's just, I want out, let the process take shape, and if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's going to make for a very tumultuous year, regardless if that's what he chooses to do. But I believe it's all on James at this point. The organization has done everything they can possibly do, not only this year, but in the past several years, trying to appease a guy that in his first chance that he gets, instead of being loyal to the team that's done all those things for him, he's turned his back and wants out.